Josh Shulman here.
Josh, you're late.
I'm not.
We have Cassandra.
I'm right where I'm.
We're right on time. We're right on time. Good morning. Welcome to this meeting. It's now called to order. It's our PSCA Finance Committee for the 17th of August. We'll go around the room and introduce the other PSCA board members on the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Dan Saraki, Mayor of the City of Oldsmar.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
My name is Richard Bennett, and I'm a Commissioner in North Reddington Beach.
Thank you, Mr. Bennett.
Josh Shulman, on time from St. Petersburg.
Thank you, Mr. Shulman.
Jeff Gow, early City Dunedin Commission.
Okay, my biggest fan.
Fantastic.
Your name, sir?
Oh, and I'm Brad Miller. I'm per the PSTA policy on time.
Okay, newly acquired haircut, you look very good, thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Now is the time for public comment. Are there any members of the public that wish to speak?
I don't have any comments.
No comments? Thank you. Now for action items.
I'll move that we approve the July 20th, 2022 minutes.
Second?
Okay, we have a motion from Commissioner Bennett and a second from Mayor Saraki. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And opposed, none. The motion passes. First up, we have Abhishek. He'll introduce our easement agreement with Duke Energy for install. There you go.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members
Good
of the Finance Committee. Abhishek Dayal, Director of Project Management. This item is for action.
It's up, you just have to click next. As long as it didn't fall asleep, which it did.
Okay.
Oh,
There we go.
Thank you. Sorry about that. So this item is for action, and it's a follow-on to the item that we had discussed last month with Duke Energy. If you recall, we have a master service agreement with Duke to perform some electrical infrastructure installation, operations and maintenance in support of our charging infrastructure for our incoming electric buses. This item is essentially an easement agreement with Duke so that they have sufficient room for them to perform the work. Duke already has a utility easement pretty much around our property for all the electrical infrastructure for the power that is coming in. What we will do is essentially modify that easement agreement to incorporate the additional infrastructure like the switch gears and the transformers to accommodate that. And essentially that's what this agreement is about. Just to reiterate, this is to approve an easement agreement with Duke for the purpose of installing electrical infrastructure for EV chargers. Happy to take any questions.
That was easy.
Yeah, it's a pretty standard agreement.
Chair?
Yes, yes.
Just for grins and giggles, is there anything that we're giving up with this easement or gaining from it that might be a concern?
No, so it's basically just giving them access to our area where they can install the switch gears. That area is 20 feet wide as opposed to 10 feet wide that we currently have with Duke. That's mainly because of the footprint of the switch gears and transformers. So that's really what it is.
Very good.
Normally, when we think about easements, we think about public property. Well, the easement that we give to Duke Power, will that no longer be our property?
We would still have access to that property, so it would not be something that Duke owns. It's
And we'll
just
still
an
own
easement.
We'll still own it, they just have an easement.
Correct, yes. So it just allows them to be able to perform any construction work, maintenance work, operations,
Put in underground cables or whatever they need to do.
cables, et cetera.
Can you go back to the slide with the blue line? Is that what you're talking about, that easement there, that blue line?
So that, this blue line, that shows the existing easement. And this is just an approximate area. Usually our easements are defined by legal descriptions.
Okay.
But this is just showing the extents of the easements approximately where Duke has with us.
Okay,
Uh,
already?
already. So it might jog a little bit depending on where the infrastructure is going to be placed. So it's not going to be 20 feet all around. It's only where they place those switch gears and transformers.
All right.
And if we voted no on this, does that mean that they would not have the ability to do their thing? This is necessary for them to do their thing.
That's exactly right.
And I'm sorry, I didn't mean to speak above you with thing, technical term.
And then last question, there's no cost.
There's no cost.
Mis-
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Mr.
You- No,
Chair.
you can, no, you go ahead.
You go ahead, Mr. Chair.
No, you go ahead.
No, I want you to go.
Oh,
Fine, I'll go.
Jesus, Dan.
I don't have anything.
So essentially, we're going back to that $100,000 thing that we went through before too. Where we approved, the payment,
And then we're not paying.
then we're not gonna pay that $100,000.
Correct. Yes.
Because we allowed them to perform the initial work.
Yes.
All right, I'm good.
Do you need a motion for the approving of this?
I do need a motion if there's no more discussion.
I'll move that we approve the Duke Energy easement.
I make a second? Second
Okay, we
motion.
have a motion from Commissioner Bennett, a second from Mayor Saraki. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, opposed, none. That motion passes. Thank you. Thank you, Abhishek, for your good work. Pass that. Now we'll go to information items. We have Reed, who just came in the door.
Perfect timing, yes.
Oh, hi.
Hello.
Go ahead. Well, you got the floor for the ridership and performance report.
Oh,
Well, hopefully.
Oh, I lied. Oh, wait, no, I didn't. Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Okay,
Sorry.
sorry I'm late, I could not get the printer to work. It was printing not in color, so I had to figure that out real quick.
Okay.
Technology.
So I'm gonna go over my personal project for leadership, which is redesigning the board report. So I know we're paperless, but I really wanted you all to have physical copies so you could actually see the update. It's a little different than just looking at it on the screen.
Oh, good.
So I'm gonna give you the current one.
That's more concentrated.
The current board report, the one you all probably recognize,
Okay.
has that little yellow box at the bottom.
Yep.
Sure, why not? I'm gonna have to print it. And then my updated design.
It's like a class Friday.
Yeah. So I have no slides, I'm just gonna go over this with you. So I'm sure you remember a few meetings ago, I came in and asked for some feedback from all of you about how you would want the board report updated. And this is what I have currently. I'm hoping that we could kind of go over it again quickly, get some of your final thoughts and feedback. And now I can finish my personal project for leadership. And we can have a nice, brand-new board report next month or September. So I just kind of want to start at the very top of the new one and just go down about, what's been changed, what's been added. And right off the bat, I want to say none of the metrics in the old one will be abandoned. They might not be on the board report physically, but they would still be tracked by myself or, someone else. So if anyone did want a metric that's, not present, it should still exist. So just to start off, at the very top, we have two.
What about the attic lands?
Yeah, sorry. At the very top, per Brad's request, there's an at a glance section, which would be a little quick 1 or 2 sentence about what are some of the main metrics we saw this month. Ridership went up 50%. Why did we see that? OTP or something fell, which is a good thing, or something in a good way, right? What are some big things that happened this month? Try to give some context to some important pieces of data. The next 2 things are some graphs for 2 of our more important metrics, ridership and OTP. On the previous board report, these were just monthly numbers, like for this month and this month last year. But I thought that those 2 metrics specifically needed some more context, some more, a few months of data all shown in the graph so you can see the ebb and flow of how ridership is going. The next little section is ridership for several of our programs. That's fixed route, our contracted service, mobility programs, paratransit, anything related to ridership. the next little monthly section below has some monthly metrics, which I feel like you can understand the numbers without looking at a past year-to-date or a year-to-date, just so you need the current monthly numbers, that's kind of it. I'll get back to that little pink graph in a second, but just moving down, we have types of trips is the next third little table, so you can see how many TD riders did we have, how many bikes or wheelchairs on the bus. These are things that are on the current board report that I thought were important, but kind of grouped together in the types of rides that are happening. And then at the very bottom, we have some more operational stats. These are total miles and hours that our fixed route did. Things like road calls per mile, which helps you understand how maintenance of the buses is going and if there's any breakdowns on the road. And then I included diesel fuel and then electric kilowatt hours for buses as we move into eventually getting our 60 electric buses. I thought it'd be important to track those two things. And then at the very bottom is total electric miles for the year. It's cumulative, so it's always going to skew up, but I think it's good to see that, over the year we've done this many electric miles on our buses. And then really quick, back to that little pink graph. Brad had this idea, and I really liked it. I think he called it a floating metric or floating graph. It would baseline show U-Pass trips each month, but say spring break comes up and we're really interested in Jolly Trolley or some other metric. This graph it could be customizable to be a different metric if, it's pertinent to 1 month. And then it could go back to U-Pass the next month or back to the baseline U-Pass, if that makes sense. And I signify which metric that graph is showing by changing the font color of the metric to pink, and I have a little arrow pointing to the actual metric. So what I really want from all you is feedback on this design, the metrics, how it's kind of laid out. Specifically on the bottom, the graph we have, I think looks fine, but if there's some more metrics you would want instead of this electric miles graph, totally open to the bottom being changed in significant ways. Yeah, I think that's it. So I've been talking a lot. If there's any general comments on, yeah.
The very first graph you have there in the top left corner, PSTA ridership.
Yes.
I look at that and it tells me that in June, we had 600,000 riders.
Yes.
And that's correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And then the OTP. and we're-
Yeah, that just looks like an awful big.
Do we have any other questions or discussion?
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Schumer?
So, first off, thank you. One item of note is you have asterisks that lead to footnotes at the bottom. We should change those to numbers or some other symbol so that you can easily identify which note goes to which
Yes.
item. Right, if they're all asterisks. It's not terribly hard, but at some point it could be, to figure out what you're trying to say there. I also wonder so first off, there's a lot to digest, obviously, looking at it. But it is a lot clearer and easier just from how you have things segmented than the old board report. So very nicely done, and I do like the graphs that can help just give the context. One question, though, when doing this is it possible to make these reports instead of PDFs? Can they be dynamic, or we can, if we wanted to pull up a different chart using the data that exists, is that capability there? Or can it be at some point? Because you said all this data exists in the background, and right now you're just pulling
you could click on the link.
Right, so if it was an Excel instead, or some other format, where we could then say, okay, I want to see that, and pull that out, or if here's the ridership numbers, but okay, that goes back to October of last year, but given the pandemic, I'd like to just scoot that back to March of 2020, right, in the board report. I know you're like, wow, that's way beyond the scope of what I was doing, but,
It's certainly possible. I think something like a OneDrive Excel that has maybe more historic data than just the year would
Mhm.
definitely be possible and not too hard.
Okay.
A more dynamic type thing would be kind of like a dashboard, which planning is also like just starting to figure out how might we do that, which is more of a long-term goal, because then we're combining Hastis and APC, Clever, and
Right.
GFI. It's a lot to manage.
Understand.
I think that is the final goal eventually.
And realize, I come from a world, if you don't ask, the answer is no. So, I would hate to find out, be like, oh, well, yeah, if we just click 2 buttons, we're good to go, and I just never asked the question. So I realize that the reality is probably a bigger thing. My hope is we can spend a little bit of time digesting what's here, and then come back with a little bit more thoughtful feedback, so don't quite close out your project yet. Maybe next month, or by next month.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner.
I don't have a question to format, but I do have a question to content. Reed, would that be to you, or would that be to? Okay, just UPass, and the idea that we made a comment that UPass is decreased, but it's unknown.
It was the summer.
But is that it? Is it, because I would hope that we'd see
Well, we'll know in the next month, if it bumps back up when school starts, then it was the summer. But it dropped right when school got out.
But there was.
Reed, would you agree that it says UPass decrease cause unknown? But wouldn't you say the likely cause was the fact that it was the summer and the school was out?
Yeah, unknown might not have been the best word, this was just an example at the glance, but like for ridership, we can tell, oh, we ended the half-fare promotion, ridership went down a little. UPass went down, probably because schools were out, but it's hard to say exactly.
as long as we're having the conversations.
Yeah.
His first draft of the little box was titled Hot Take, and now it's At a Glance.
I like hot take.
Hot take is better, but at a glance is more
Oh, come
appropriate.
on.
I think,
So,
and I like it.
Because it might not, yeah, I think it might be.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
So we also, we talked about adding this back on the original operating statistics, information about national trends as well, and how they're, and how we're comparing to those. Has there been any thought about how to transition that sort of information to this board report?
I believe we talked about it in one of our meetings, Brad, where that might be it'd be easier if that was a quarterly thing, unless we wanted to make this like 2 pages.
Well, so for me, even just like a national ridership trend, that might be an overlay of ours with national trends as the bottom graph. So we can just easily see, okay, we're trending, we're following the same pattern as the national trend, and even if that's only updated quarterly. But,
Interesting idea.
yeah, something that just kind of also gives us the context of our agency in terms of the transit usage by, Americans overall.
Yeah. I think we discussed that the at a glance area, we would kind of put notes comparing us, comparative things, but I like the idea of, just showing it on the graph.
Yeah, I will say the electric miles this year is not a helpful graph.
Yeah.
It's just gonna increase, all it's gonna show is if we have a power outage, or buses stop running for some reason. It's not telling us anything that we need to then be able to make a decision on, which is what a board report is meant to do, is to give us more metrics, so if there's something that we, as an oversight group, need to then weigh in on. I don't know if I need to weigh in on how much energy we're using on a cumulative on it. Now, the electric bus kilowatt hours is very interesting, because it's the offset of the diesel fuel coming down, right? So those 2 numbers make sense. So,
And it kind of shows which direction we're heading to, meaning more use of the electric vehicles that we have in our stable.
But you're probably right. It probably will just go, like, I think in the presentation on the Duke upgrades that Abhishek presented last month, this will just go like this line, and then it'll go spike up when we get more
we
electric
get
buses.
60 buses, and all of a sudden the
Yeah.
line, and then it'll start growing from there again. So I don't know if it, other than telling us those buses are in service,
Yeah.
in which case, a chart showing how many electric buses we have in service at any given point would also accomplish that. So, just a thought.
Thank you, Commissioner. Have we any more, board discussion? Okay, and on OTP, is that on-time performance, is that what that stands for, OTP? Okay, it's pretty low, ain't
It is low.
Yeah.
Yes, it's
it?
a
What's our goal,
key focus.
85%?
Well, we just set a goal for next year that is on our scorecard to get to 70, right?
70?
Better, we said better.
What?
We said better.
Yeah, but, okay, and when we're talking OTP, we're talking within 30 minutes, within 15 minutes? or being
Five.
on time?
So
Five?
we- So.
4:59.
Right, so if you are 0 to 5 minutes out of the schedule is considered on time. So we look at both earlies, right, so anything that is early is not good, even if it's a
not on
second
time.
early, it's
I
not good.
understand. Are we capturing that pretty well too, because we have
Yes.
problems?
Yes, and that's the thing that we can control more through scheduling and operator training.
Right.
So we work on those first. Sometimes when we do that, it creates more lates in the
Okay.
process. So it's a constant fight to get it right. And what we've started doing is not looking from bid to bid, but looking season to season, because we have the spring break season becomes a whole new thing. So we build in extra time for certain routes during that time. It's a challenge, and it's,
Yeah, because 0 to 5 is pretty stringent, I mean, that's a
Yeah.
pretty tight, the airline sure as heck don't get that.
Yeah, but we adopted a couple of years ago the exact same definition through our benchmarking group, that it's supposed to be able to compare apples to apples,
Yeah,
because
yeah, yeah.
every city wants to have a new thing, their own thing. But, yeah, so the 0 to 5 is the standard.
Yeah, well, that's gold, Mark, what do you think? You're
No,
0 to 5
that's
on
standard,
time.
that's standard nationally?
Well,
Or
again,
PSTA
there's
standard?
25 transit systems in the benchmarking group. I don't know of any other kind of standard that's been created, but amongst our peers, that where we're at, which is 67% is low,
Right,
is lower than the average.
okay.
And so that's our focus area.
But
Let's get
that's
that up.
everything combined, am I correct, or is that just the buses and it's all the
Buses.
transit system?
It's just
Yeah.
a fixture
Meaning
of us.
everything.
It doesn't include access. Access has its own separate.
It's just fixed
it's
route?
just fixed.
Yeah.
Okay, it's just fixed route then?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, yeah.
And do we know why we are where we are with this, and why we're not meeting our goal?
On-time
On
performance?
time, yeah.
Well, as Cassandra was describing it, there's lots of ideas and lots of initiatives in place. First of all, as a rider, there's no excuse for running early.
Right.
You should never get to the bus stop on time and the bus has already gone by.
Right,
That is so annoying.
Right.
What that happens to? So that's what we're focusing on now, because that can be easily, I mean, that is training, and
What could be easily tracked. too,
Right.
isn't it?
Well, and I guess the point I'm getting to is if we can identify what those factors are that are hindering us from achieving the goal, controlling what we can control as PSTA, but things that are outside our boundaries, like traffic, is that an opportunity then for us to lobby and encourage the county to work with us? Because that's just one of the negative aspects within the community on why they don't use public transportation. They're always late, the frequency, and so how can we control that messaging? How can we tell the county, you need to help us, we want to achieve this goal, and you are slowing us down? And take control of that, and putting pressure on the county to help us with funding or separate lanes, or whatever those options are available. But if we just kind of acknowledge it and control what we can control, but because of those external factors, we'll never get where the residents want us to get, then we'll never get out of that negative aspect with, and at least for me, and my goal is to get everybody to ride public transit. And you've got to meet those expectations. And so we got to control what we can control and lobby and encourage for those other changes. And so, to me, it's important that we identify what those factors are. And then yell at the county, yell at the state, we need your help.
Yeah, and maybe Abhishek can talk about the TSP that we planned for the Sunrunner and also for 34th. but the county does control all of even the state roadways, the signals within Nellis County. So when you're talking to, you know, intercity councils and other regional boards, it's important to make that known, that transit signal priority is something that is really important to us. And maybe Avi can just explain how that's working on the Sunrunner.
Yeah, I mean, as you know, for Sunrunner, transit signal priority is something we're testing out, and we'd like to expand that to other parts of the county. It doesn't have to be a BRT route, it could be any of our routes that can use signal priority to speed up our buses and keep them on time. So TSP is something that we're actually working with FDOT as part of their resurfacing along 34th Street as an option to include, to keep our buses on time and maybe improve the on-time performance.
So maybe
these are just
explain
a couple-
exactly what the TSP does.
Yeah, so TSP is basically stands for Transit Signal Priority. And the way it works is if the buses are running behind by 5 minutes or more, they can request the traffic signals to be reprogrammed temporarily so that the buses can pass through, along with the traffic with the buses, to pass through those intersections and stay on schedule.
And I know that right that is with the Sunrunner. And so to me, and I know, and I'm sure the entire board and staff, you know, the success of the Sunrunner, you know, can't be overstated. And so it's a matter of identifying those benchmarks and making sure that the Sunrunner is on time, and then using that as the historical reference to why we need to expand that program to all fixed routes, whether it's a BRT or not.
Certainly.
And so, anyway, I'm sorry I beat that drum. Trying to take all the negative stigma away.
You're doing fine. Shut off my alarm.
I mean, the first thing.
I have a question.
Okay. Do we have any more?
We do. There's two right next to you.
Go ahead.
Okay. Is that, thank you, Mr. Chair. So first off, a couple other items. One, you have acronyms on here, like OTP, right? In the footnotes, it's APC. If there's room to put what it is, right? So not all, like, I'll be honest, what is GFI trips? Did I miss you talking about that?
It's
Okay, so thanks for proving my point. No one here knows what that
I don't know.
is.
It's a company name, I don't know.
What was the question?
GFI trips, right? So it's not on our current board report. It's a new item, and I don't know what it is, right? So
Good idea.
we should, especially since not only
Good point.
we need to know, but members of the public that look at our reports also need to be able to know what we're talking about. So I also think the total Flamingo trips line is probably not necessary, right? You have the breakdown right above it of just app or card, right?
I'm sorry, where are you?
Middle block, the Flamingo. For me, it wasn't necessary because we have the two breakdowns right above it, you know. The total
In the blue.
Yeah, it's just adding those two numbers together. I think many of us can quickly estimate and add two numbers together. Like the total passenger trips above makes sense because it's, okay, now we got like 5, 6, 7, it's a subtotal of another. That makes sense to give us a better line, but that wasn't necessarily as helpful. But yeah, the main thing was the acronyms in that line. I'll have more, I'm sure.
Perfect. Mr. Bennett?
Uh,
Thank you, Josh.
Can you tell us quickly how we distinguish the difference between severe accidents and non-severe accidents?
I can't give an exact definition. I get those numbers from Olivia from
There is
operations.
a definition of what is severe, and I probably won't get it perfectly right, but it includes if there was a weapon, or if there was an actual assault.
Events involving physical and verbal and weapons assault or threats.
Okay.
That's on the footnote of the actual board, of the original board report.
Okay.
Account. It's all in the footnotes.
an incident has to have one of those things happen for it to go to be
I-
severe.
I'd hate to take this report to my commission and give it to them, because it asks too many questions I don't know the answers to.
No, yeah, I
But
can
we'll,
add-
but maybe after a few times, we'll get better at it.
Well, see, this is
I'll know
what I
all
hope,
the
because, I mean, you've had the report every month,
Yes.
and we don't really have any questions, because it's too, now at least with the graphs and things, it spurs questions.
And that's good.
Yeah, it's good.
What that also means, we should move the footnote for severe incidents from the current board report
To the new
to
one.
this one, explains, right? 'Cause
For some of those technical definitions.
it's important information. Again, if you were from the public looking at that, having that easy answer makes sense.
Mr. Chair, I have one comment. You did a great job. I think it's a much better improvement, and I want to thank you for all your hard work. Good job.
I appreciate that.
Thank you, and, this was an informational item, but I was wondering if the Finance Committee might make an action. I just learned that, our good friend Reed here is, thinking that this is not as important as his girlfriend, and he's moving to Denver.
No. They have a terrible transit system.
Could you,
This one's much
motion that
better.
he's not allowed to go to that until all you.
You're only going to be there about 6 months. You're moving back, trust me.
Is this an action item now?
I don't know.
Put a ring on it.
Congratulations, it is an excellent report.
Yeah.
Thank you for doing that.
Sorry to
When's the
see you
big
late.
day?
Sorry?
When's the big day, Ray?
September 2nd?
So we need to have feedback back by September 1st. That's what I heard.
Make that last day painful.
Are you ready? Are you ready for 8 months of snow? Are you ready?
I'm looking forward to snow, yeah.
All right, 8 months of it, you're going to get it.
Yeah.
You're going to be going like this every 8 months.
Bring on the powder.
Please also remember, this meeting is being recorded, so we can play that back for you about month 6.
When it's 6.
Right, Deb? 8 months.
Exactly. But we'll have that documented for you.
Gray and depressing.
Reed has done a good job though of setting up a transition plan with other folks to carry this out. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Reed.
Thank you.
We have no more questions, we appreciate it. Finally, at the good suggestion, as opposed to that, of Commissioner Shulman last month, CFO Debbie Leas will present different hypothetical funding and tax rate scenarios if PSA's funding was not capped at 0.75 mils. Debbie?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, this isn't an action item. It's really not even an information item. I've called it discussion, but it could be considered an inspiration item as we talk about things. Back in, what was it, 1982, we set the millage, the maximum millage, what we couldn't go over at PSTA to 0.75. The property tax can be used for anything in our operating budget. You know, I kind of put up here some examples, operators, fuel, health, our piece of the health insurance, anything within our operating budget. So it's very flexible compared to what our grants allow us to do. And one of the things that the property tax allows us to do is it allows us to take our revenue, our operating revenue that we earn, and if we have excess over what our expenses are, we can take our operating revenue and put it towards matching grants. Every time the planning department does a wonderful grant application, they come to me. And as part of that application, I have to attest to the fact that I can provide the match to it. So I just put up a couple more recent examples of grants that we were able to get because the property tax allowed us to be able to take some of our money and basically grow what we have. So we take a look like electric buses, we're constantly putting in, grant applications for that. A very exciting BRT from Sunrunner, and FDOT as well has provided us money. And our operating assistance that we get from FDOT every year, it's termed as, well, we get block grant money, we also get some money for routes. Those require a match. It's usually like 50% money, so we've been able to be successful with that. And I keep anxiously awaiting, literally daily now, for what feels like months, for the VW settlement money. So this is a great opportunity for us to basically, like I have up there, let your money work for you. So the hypothetical question that came to me was, what if there was no cap? What if you could charge whatever you want? I kind of came up with a hot take, which I wasn't too far off of, and that is to basically be balanced for the next 5 years. Instead of being at the 0.75 max that we're at today, we would increase it to 0.845. That would just break us even. No breathing points. And then Brad came to me and he said, what if we were good partners for all those partners that we have in the community that help us out now on a local level? Tarpon Springs, Clearwater, City of St. Pete, all these different agencies or municipalities. What if we took the burden off of them and we paid for it all ourselves? Any of the services, what would that mean? So for our existing limited services with bus and trolley, that would bring it up just a smidge more. Because again, we're talking about a huge dollar amount that we're talking about from the, taxes that are collected in the county to 0.85. Again, breaking even. No real wiggle room whatsoever. But what we just talked about, as Commissioner Gowett said, what if we could do something more? What if we could increase our span of service, our frequency of service, that we could do more things? I just threw, it's kind of a bit of a hot take number, but at least twice what we're getting now would actually help us to achieve that at a 1.50. But I kind of came back to reality. We're at a max millage. We have been since 2016. And without going to a ballot initiative, we don't have any options. But we could look to our funding partners, as we were alluding to earlier. Go knock on the doors of, like, the county to help us out. When we look at the American Bus Benchmarking Group, and I haven't honestly looked at it in a little while, we were at the bottom of the list of transit authorities in the country with the local support that we get. So we continue to work in a partnership way to be able to improve that through financial diversity. So I'm not giving up hope on that. And to also, as we know, we always talk at this committee especially about being very effective and efficient in everything that we do. So we're not going to give up on that piece, but I do think we need to start thinking forward of looking out to funding partners for us. So I appreciate the opportunity, Commissioner Schulman, to bring this to the table as an inspiration item for us to think about.
Thank you, Josh, that is good.
If I have just a quick comment.
Okay,
I lied. It's never a quick comment.
no, go ahead.
I will go as
Take
quick
your
as I'd
time.
like. Debbie, thank you. And I do think, especially for also the people of Pinellas County who might be seeing other agencies lowering taxes, changing their millage, it's important for them to get a full context as to what we're doing here. And this helps provide some information that we are really maximizing what we have. And when we ask for a millage rate of 0.75 at the max, it's not because that's just the max and we just want as much money as we can. It's because that's still not filling the bucket. Like we're getting as much, we're doing as much as we can with the money that we have. And so this helps give that context. I will say, and I mentioned this before, when it comes to local partners, there's still a ton of talk about affordable housing, and I would like to see us try to work to help change the nature of that conversation with municipalities, as opposed to funding and putting money into individual assets that are either owned by individual investors or apartment structures to lower rent, is to put that money into transit so that we can actually, it still decreases the household budget, but it then serves the broader community, right? If you get affordable housing, only the person living in that housing benefits. If we increase efficiency and frequency, because we have more influx from our partners, that benefits the entire community for potentially similar amounts of dollars. So I'd like us to all, this gives us the context that we could be doing so much more if we had more. Our only ability to do that is to go to the partners. And I think the discussion around the personal family budget and housing is an opportunity for us to, at our own levels, each try to change the nature of that conversation and put the investment that benefits the entire community as opposed to the people just needing housing. So again, with the goal of reducing the overall cost to the family, I'm not saying housing's like fine, just saying we might be able to shift some of that knowledge or the focus. So, and I think this can help municipalities that aren't part of PSTA's daily workings understand the importance of those partnerships, and our ability to increase transit options is only going to be through their help. So, Debbie, thank you, and thanks, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Young?
And if I can piggyback on that, just to acknowledge that while housing is the largest part of anybody's personal budget, transportation is second. And so if we can help alleviate that pain through a car payment, through insurance, through maintenance, through fuel, that allows them to put more money towards housing. And so public transportation is part of the success story of solving the affordable housing problem. And so it's just a matter of sharing that story and and really reaching out to our partners. If we can, you had mentioned, Debbie, that we are at the bottom of that list. Can we get a copy of that list? How are we compared to other agencies, whether that's state or whether that's nationally? How you break that down, how we would look at that? If we can take a look at, and the purpose wouldn't be to shame local communities, but I'd like to know for Dunedin where we stand versus St. Pete, Clearwater, Largo, Tarpon Springs, Oldsmar. How, where are we? And so what is my message back to my own commission on what I can do to help support? And so I need you guys to help me tell that story.
Oh, you're looking at Dunedin, intra sort of comparisons. St. Petersburg, Dunedin, Clearwater.
Well, from my understanding, we have different local communities are supporting in different ways.
Right.
I'm still new and I'm still learning, right?
Right.
So what is that? So basically, what do you want me to go back and tell my commission to do as far as supporting this? And also that
I think the answer is thank you very much.
you want more money?
No,
Right?
well, just we're thankful for what we get.
Well, no, you can't be thankful for what we get and show us that what you can do with more. To me, that doesn't make sense. Tell me what you need to get there, and then it's my job to help you
Well,
get that.
I asked Debbie to do that analysis because, quite frankly, it's been from your fine city. But the idea, I've been told by leaders in your community and other leaders around this county, well, PSDA was created to provide public transportation for the county. So why is my city having to put in money to fund the Looper or the Jolly Trolley or this, that, and the other thing?
And that's absolutely true. I'm so envious of the 15-minute intervals of the Sunrunner. How cool, that should be everywhere in the county. And so for me, it's how do we get there? And if it takes more support from our local communities, then that's what it takes. I wasn't involved before my time with Greenlight Pinellas, so I don't know the details of that program or why it failed. But there needs to be more support, and so I just need to, again, know what that story is, so I can share that story and beat that drum and help lobby the county or the state. Anyway, off my soapbox. And you guys do a wonderful job. That's nothing against the competency of your staff is so amazing. They really are. Marketing is fabulous. So it's just a matter of honing that story and beating that drum.
Thank you.
Anyway.
Thank you, Commissioner Bennett, you have something to say?
Well, I'm not saying that what we're doing with that .75 is not outstanding, because we're doing a lot with that. But I think if you were to put together a chart or a graph of the amount of money that .75 is bringing to PSTA in the past 25 years, the graph would almost be a right angle going up in the air.
Because the property values have gone up.
Because the property values have gone up 10 times. So that .75 automatically every year brings us a lot more money than it did the previous year. I'd be in favor of lowering that number. I think it's too much. My town lowers it every year. Every year, we say we're gonna levy 1 mil, and we see how much money that'll bring, and we say, that's too much money, let's only levy .9. So that's what we do. We were .75. We were the lowest millage rate in the county.
Yeah.
Okay, that's it.
I think.
No comment, mister.
Okay, I have a comment. Debbie, you were mentioning that how we're funded is one of the lowest in the country. And I just read a recent article from our new reporter, Olivia George, and it had us ranked at number 99, PSTA at number 99, and Hillsborough at number 98. And then you got number 100, whoever that poor company is. And, well, you know, I've been around these meetings for a while, you know, probably a decade or more. And the .75, I think differently on this, Richard, that I truly believe that the public should invest in public transportation, meaning the homeowners should, because that's where this money's coming from, you know. Well, as homeowners, and those that are taxed for their property. And .75 has been on, at least for the decade or so I've been around, you know.
Since 1982.
1982.
Yeah.
Your eyes born.
I didn't have my glasses on. And it's always, we'll never get it to pass, you know, through the legislature. To get, and it has to go through a referendum on it, and not correct, and the legislature has to approve that, or is it a local?
I think a
Good question.
referendum,
Good question.
the county could change that number.
I don't know.
That's a
Yeah.
great
There'd have to be a vote of the
inspiration.
citizens.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I'm just asking, but it seems like every time that I've heard that option come up, there's been a roadblock. Well, no,
Right.
it's not gonna happen. And I know I don't pay a lot towards it, you know, our house, because we have all the homestead in and all that stuff, and it's a very minuscule amount that we pay, and I'm sure people that have, you know, a house that is worth more than our house, they pay more money, but I think it's not a terrible investment for our county to do, and our residents to do, and our people that move here from up north and not say, well, I paid that up north, and I don't need to pay it down here. And that just bugs me every time when they go, well, people aren't on the buses, people don't ride the buses, and that's not true also. You know, so we have a lot of false facts out there. But if there's somewhere or another that we could, because it seems like it's gonna be our only option at some point in time, is to get that millage bumped up, because, you know, yeah, we can ask our partners, our, you know, Largo and Tarpon and Dunedin and all our community partners to help. But for us to become more robust, that either has to go up significantly, or we have to get a referendum put on for a penny tax or a half penny tax or something like that. Like Hillsborough is doing right now again, you know, and hopefully theirs will go through, and then hopefully, we're just different over here is all I gotta say. We're, you know, no offense to Penobscot, I love Penobscot, I've been here since I was 5 years old, and I've seen a lot of changes. And, but I do wish that we could get more bang for our buck, meaning from,
Well, and so the thought was, because what lots of folks have said, especially folks in the county, if it requires a vote of the citizens to either increase the number here on the property tax, or a vote of the citizens to transition to a sales tax.
Right.
Which, for the first time, then, non-residents, tourists
Right,
would pay
right,
a
right, right.
piece of
right,
they would prefer to go down that
Yeah,
road.
well, it makes sense, and I mean, it's a significant amount that tourism pays. I've heard it's
And
upwards
it's
of
a
30%
significant amount, yeah.
of the sales tax.
Yeah, the big
And the
bus
bed
users
tax.
are not paying.
What's that?
The big bus users are paying the least amount of money.
How so?
Yeah, how do
Oh,
you get that?
well,
There's nobody that owns a $3 million house riding the bus. But everybody that owns a $20,000 house rides it every day.
And thank God.
And all the tourists ride it.
tourists ride it.
And they pay nothing.
Right.
So the people who ride the bus don't pay.
Well, yeah, they do pay. I mean, they pay for a fare,
They pay a fare.
and, you know, I see where they're not paying extra.
I would also say there's not a lot of $20,000 houses these days, that's part of the problem.
Yeah, you're not gonna find a $20,000
People that
house.
rent are paying taxes as a part of their rental
Right.
payment, and the landlord, the person who owns the rental building is paying taxes, so it's just a pass-through. So, I mean, it is there, and I do, Mr. Chair, if I may, one of the things that's also tricky about the millage rate, you know, even though houses may go up in value,
Right.
because the Save Our Home cap,
Right.
it's only going up 3% for
Yeah,
homeowners.
yeah, yeah.
And because of portability on the Save Our Home cap, even if you move to something bigger, it's not growing as big. So, yes, we've had a big bump in revenues because of new development here in
Right.
Pinellas County, but that is not a sustainable option
Right.
for us to continue to grow new property. And so the more people we have owning, the flat line we're gonna get as far, you know, the increase is only gonna be about that 3%. Even on the commercial property, I think, it's 10% is the cap? So it is not like it is in, you know, a lot of the folks that do move down here and from up north who have their property taxes reassessed either every year or periodically are just completely unfamiliar. And so they look at it and go, oh, well, you know, my house was $400,000 and now it's $800,000 3 years later because, you know, that's just the way it worked around here. So my taxes must have doubled. And that in reality
They didn't.
is not the
Right.
case. So there is, we have to be careful about how we talk about this and saying that, you know, it's just going up exponentially because home values are going up. That is
Right,
not
right.
necessarily the case.
Right.
You know, I also, as I was saying, I really take strong objection to the notion that the people that ride the bus don't pay for the bus. At the end of the day, we're also all a community, and we're all paying for our part. and
Well,
doing
I
our
said
part.
I don't necessarily disagree with that.
I've yet to have a fire in my house, but I
But-
continue to pay for the fire department.
But you know, we have people in this county that don't pay. We have towns that don't pay.
That's
That's the
that I'm
first
willing
thing
to,
that's the first thing we should go after.
You're-
Everybody should pay.
that is something that is.
I don't know why we don't go after that.
It's been 5 years. I think it's time to have that conversation again. So, I mean, yeah, I think that is certainly a reasonable thing to talk about. But
They might make a token contribution, but they're not paying .75.
If you go to a St. Pete City Commission meeting, you'll hear a few things from
St. Pete Beach.
St. Pete Beach.
St. Pete
I'm
Beach,
sorry,
yeah.
not St. Pete.
easy does it.
There are people. But yeah, I went to one and that was,
The other thing,
That's all I can take.
the other thing I would just say is, Commissioner Bennett, I know you said that, you know, you and your city are looking at your expenses and you're able to reduce millage rate. If your expenses were higher, my sense is that you would probably raise the millage rate so that you would have a balanced budget and be able to cover the expenses that you deem necessary for the operation of your city. In this case, you're able to reduce the rate. PSTA is not able to reduce the rate because our millage rate should be .845. Right, so if we had the freedom to charge what we wanted, maybe, if we could charge whatever, maybe last year we were at .9 and this year we'd be at .845. So we would be reducing it, but we don't. So we are still only filling our bucket of funds to the 90% level, even at the max rate. So, and I would absolutely, if we were meeting all our needs, getting all the available match funds with the revenue that we have offsetting, and we were able to then lower the millage, I think that would be a wise choice, right? We've invested in everything, we've done everything we wanted to do, there's nothing left to do, then that would make sense. That is not the picture that we're painting,
Correct.
so.
all right. Thank you, Josh, thank you, Mr. Bennett. Thank you, Bill Mayor.
You got it.
Okay, Ms. Miller.
Thank you, Debbie.
Thank you, Debbie.
Julie's up.
Thank you, Julie.
Julie and I.
Julie, let me read my
Yeah.
script before you sit down.
You can still read it.
Julie Lucas, Director of Accounting, will walk us through the monthly financial report for June 22nd. Julie?
Yeah,
Oh, we're
Debbie
gonna
and I have a
tag team.
Oh, okay, Debbie and Julie. It's a tag team.
It is, because I don't want to confuse everybody, and I'm going to confuse everybody, but by the time we finish the month of September, you guys will be experts. So, we have a new front page on there, and this is to maybe better explain what is happening, basically from a budgetary standpoint for next fiscal year and how it's impacting this year. Last month, I brought an information item to the board where I am basically telling you that what we're going to do is take some of our COVID relief money, and instead of drawing it down, all of it this fiscal year, almost all of it this fiscal year, when I was in a total state of panic on what the federal government was going to do, I'm now calmed down, and we're going to take a chunk of that and put it into next fiscal year. And I wanted to also put it on a sort of a chart format here. So on the very first chart at the top, we have an adopted grant revenue piece in our budget of $65.7 million. I'm going to take about $29 million of that and move it into next year, leaving us with a revised grant revenue forecast of about $36.6 million. In the next chart, how does that make us look on an overall budget basis? Our budget for the revenue side is divided into two categories, our operating revenues and our grant revenues. You can see, if you follow down the line, our total revenues in the first column, $138.6 million, will now be shifting over to $108 million. Our expenses, we're forecasting those to go down, but our expenses were budgeted this year at $97.5 million. So we originally had an anticipated whopping surplus of $41 million. By pushing this over into next year, our forecast now is lowering that surplus to about $13.8 million. Still quite healthy. But next year, when we actually look at the budget for next year, we have about a $1.3 million surplus. So that one-time COVID relief funding will be going away, which then starts giving us a squeeze on the future years. So how do we look so far this year with this change in strategy? That's the bottom chart. So we are taking a look at what the June year-to-date budget would be by moving this money over into next year. By doing that, our revised revenues are looking at about $105.8 million. Our expenses, and that's just based on what we have year-to-date as a budget, 72.6. So our revised surplus should be around 33.2 million. We're actually performing better than anticipated because expenses are under budget, and we are also doing a little bit better on our actual grant revenues as well in other areas. So what Julie's going to do is kind of bring us back to reality, comparing us to what we have actually adopted in our budget.
Can I ask a question? first,
Absolutely.
Just on that chart? How did you choose the $29 million to move to next year?
That helped us to get to a balanced budget in next year. Otherwise, this $41 million in a waterfall as it comes down would go into reserves, and I'd be pulling out of reserves to balance the budget for next year. Number one, that's not a good look. You want to be able to balance the budget on your own, so by shifting it over, it allows us to do that from that standpoint. The other thing, by shifting it over, it allows us to use some of the buildup of the state grant funds that we have. You'll be starting to see that in July's number, so that we don't come to December of this year when our first state grant will be expiring without having used it up.
So can the COVID funds be moved to 24 also, or is that stretching too far?
That's probably stretching it a little too far, because I will be able to use this up within the first probably quarter of next year. That's
Okay.
not,
Well, so I guess what I was wondering is if it made sense to act, because we're still ending with a surplus of, we have 36,
yeah.
and whether that made sense, or
Well, this is
I guess
today.
that's up to, through today. It's
You
gonna-
just brought up a good point. Julie and I were discussing this. The back half of the year is crash and burn
Right.
on revenues, because we collect all of our revenues for property tax November, December, January, and then it trickles off. So we start having budgeted deficits in the last few latter months of the year. We still come back to a balanced budget, but it's like this on revenues. Our expenses are more like this. So, you're gonna be seeing that number come down, so,
But there still is a 13, almost $14
right,
million expected budgeted surplus.
correct.
For this year.
And we'll be needing to use that in the coming years?
I just wasn't sure, like, from a budgetary standpoint.
Could
if
we
it-
push off a
to-
little
to-
bit more?
To push off more, and
You know what?
I leave that to your decision. I just wanted to understand.
No,
if you
it's a
got to
good
that.
point. We have a budget meeting set up tomorrow to really take a good look at this, so that we're strategizing how quickly we're using the state money, how quickly we're using the federal money, how can we make the best use of it. And again, we're doing great on drawing down the federal funds. I got a little too excited drawing them down.
Okay. Thank you.
Julie, I'll let you take it the rest of the way.
All right, thanks, Debbie. So for the month of June, we finished with a net deficit of 4.08 million, which was 4.20 million unfavorable to budget. Federal grant revenue makes up the majority of this deficit, being 5 million unfavorable to budget. Here you see the effects of moving the use of the federal COVID relief funds to the next year, and this will continue to rise throughout the rest of this fiscal year. Expenses come in at 16,000 unfavorable to budget, mostly due to the diesel fuel prices being high at 311,000 unfavorable to budget. Insurance expense and purchase transportation being favorable to budget help to offset the areas that are unfavorable. On the year-to-date for June, we finished with a surplus of 35.9 million, but we're 10.5 million unfavorable to budget. Federal grant revenue, again, makes up the majority, being 13 million unfavorable to budget. On the expense side, purchase transportation at 1.4 million and services expense at 1.1 million favorable to budget both contribute to the expense variance and help to offset a small amount of the grant revenue variance. Any questions? I know that's always a lot.
So, not a question, and I don't know if it makes sense, but, is it possible, if we're shifting money from the budget, that was the money that was coming into to future years, next year or beyond, is it possible to have an offsetting reportable, like, revenue?
On these charts?
Showing that we're receiving, like, from an accounting standpoint, we're receiving a credit from future years because we're shifting the money, so that we have an offset, so it's not skewing the reports. Right, so yes, we're off budget, but we're not, it becomes, again, we're having to like subtract that out ourselves, and it's just an accounting issue, it's not.
So maybe I can take what I've got on page 1 and put an extra line on page 2?
Right, well, or like, is there, a positive to expense or an offsetting revenue of that money, coming in, so they offset each other and net each other out. So that they're showing, but we basically just moved that to a future year for accounting purposes, because it's not, it's not really it's not showing us what's going on in the financial report with the agency, it is just an accounting line item.
Right.
So, in this case, I think having an offset that takes that out in the report,
Okay.
right, it could even be right underneath it, would be helpful to then clear that out so we can see the totals and get to the real numbers of what we're trying to evaluate.
I think, we talked about whether or not we would actually do like a formal budget amendment, but since it's August and there's only one more month of the fiscal year, and this will all be moot come October 1.
Well, that's a good point.
That's why Debbie gave the little presentation at the beginning and put the page 1.
Okay, we can do math for another month. That-
Well, it would be through September, so it would be 3 more months of reports, actually, July,
Like I said,
August.
Well, then never mind, then do it, because I can't do 3 months.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you'll be extra.
1 month.
Yes.
But it's interesting, Brad and I had the discussion because I felt a real need to bring this as an information item last month. From the expense side, if we were to go over on our overall bottom line, we're required by statute to do an amendment. But there's no requirements when on the revenue side. So, but it's important to talk about.
Okay. I have no other questions. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Are we still on page 3? Where are we on?
We're on quarterly reports.
And I think I'm playing the part of quarterly reports today.
You are, yes.
So,
Monthly financial report, am I on the wrong page?
I think we have to go to page like,
108?
well, that's the end of it. We could always start with the very
Oh,
end.
no,
I like
don't do
that idea.
Don't do that. I'm good.
You found it?
Yeah, yeah.
Our quarterly reports start with the capital budget versus actual report. And in there, we have, I guess the big variance we have on a year-to-date basis through June 30th is that we are under budget $13.2 million. And the primary reason for that is just the timing on the passenger amenities, which is basically the Sunrunner. Just off a little bit, and those are big dollars in Sunrunner, so that's what's skewing that on that. We're finding, and as we work with our budget project managers, we're trying very hard to try to get them to be a little bit more realistic on the timing of things, but supply chain, we have no control over. So some of this relates to that. And if you want to skip all the way through, unless you've got questions on any, what we do is provide you an individual report on everything, every project we have out there. If you go to, I think it's about page 104? 104 starts the fuel report.
Oh, yeah.
And I've been scribbling down some numbers, and of course, I don't know what I did with them. But, here we go. On the fuel report, you can see on here, our average price per gallon with the rise of the fuel prices was $3.93 compared to our budget of $2.30. That's Julie talking about we're up over budget. We have been able to lock in some of the fuel for this year, but next year I'm very pleased to say we've locked in 3 contracts for next fiscal year. And a contract is equal to 42,000 gallons. So we've done 3 contracts per month. And right now, I'm very excited to say, we're going to be saving about $1.1 million in next year's budget over what we presented to you in the June initial draft budget by doing that. It was a great team effort between procurement and the budget team. Literally, I keep up the NYMEX all the time, but because I'm in meetings and all, we had team members just literally shooting out little emails and little things saying, prices at this, and then I'd yell out, lock in, and then they'd go run and lock in something. And it was really a lot of fun and able to save us a lot of money. I still have, so what does that mean by having 3 contracts a month? It's worth about 2/3 of what we use. So I'm still letting 1/3 float to the marketplace. What that allows us to do is if we start seeing prices spiking, we can lock in more. If we see prices dropping, we'll then be favorable to our budget. And we'll be looking to amend the budget number.
What's the budgeted price for, what's
And we were at $4, now it'll be coming in at about $3.20 for the piece that's locked in. And then I may be a little more generous on what's not locked in, given the volatility in the marketplace.
So we are using the locked-in number for the budget?
For about 2/3 of the
Only
budget.
2/3.
Okay, so the new budget the budget we're gonna be approving, is going to be a blended rate of the 320, the locked-in rate and assumed third.
Maybe I might leave the rest at 4, maybe I'll bring it down a little bit from there.
But it's not gonna be the 4 that we originally
That's
presented
correct.
as part of the assignment, okay.
Yep.
And the 4 to what, you're saying there's a cost savings from the 4
Of
that was budgeted?
1.1 million.
Okay. Okay.
No actual cost savings, just a
Budget.
hypothetical budget.
Well, yes, but it's helping us out.
Now, that lock-in rate, is there any commitment behind that as far as number of gallons?
You bought it.
You
That's
bought
what
it.
you're
bought it,
buying.
We did buy it, okay, so we are committed.
Must take delivery.
Yeah, you basically have to take delivery of 42,000 gallons or whatever it is.
Okay,
We
so
could
that,
store it here and then try to sell it back later, but that would be a different.
You have to talk about that.
We'd have to have a different finance committee meeting on the construction of tanks.
oh, yeah,
What does
we
our
just-
tank hold here on the property?
Henry?
Henry?
How much were you
We
getting?
have 4 20,000-gallon tanks, so
Okay.
80,000.
80,000. Wow, it'll work.
Yeah, but we're gonna get that every month, so we're gonna need like
We'll
300,000-400,000
We'll take one
tanks.
tank and sell it off, and deliver another one.
Put a pump out by the road?
I am not
Put a
trying
sign?
to divert our attention to
Like oil
like
peanuts?
Okay, sorry.
oil trading.
Yeah, we got another meeting coming up. All right.
Yep.
All right, we also have in here the investment and reserve reports, and the team just met yesterday, I think it was. And we're gonna be shaking up these reports a little bit, not hugely, but shaking them up a little bit to be a little bit more, I'll say different at this point. We'll see how they all come out. But we have in here our investment allocation. Obviously, we're extremely conservative. We have things in certificates of deposits and money market accounts. And the reserve pieces, some of what is going to change. We have this wonderful new revenue manager, her name is Shelley Chapko, and she's gonna make some of my dreams come true on some of this, because it'll make it a lot easier in the reporting process, where we will actually have bank accounts. So, Mayor Dan, be prepared to sign.
I'm ready.
So that when we have like a self-insurance reserve, it's actually going to be, as in my dream, a separate account. It says insurance reserve.
That's
A physical account. So like I said, we're shaking things up. Speaking of shaking things up, we also have the health insurance report. And we have improved since last quarter on our cost per claims. And while we don't show the last quarter on here, we were at, when we talk about loss ratios, last quarter we were at 87%. We've improved it to 83%. So the cost per claim in all categories have gone down in all the categories, which is good news. We also have just completed open enrollment for next year, and we did see a slight uptick in the number of people going into the high deductible plan. Not huge, but a slight uptick, even better than I think we've seen in prior years, so. Everything's looking a little rosier this quarter. But are there any questions? Yes, sir.
Of course, Josh, let's go.
So question about the investment report, and not really necessarily about the report itself, but what we're doing there. Several months ago, you said that you were going to be potentially interviewing financial advisors to advise on what might happen there. Has that moved at all?
It has not. No financial advisors responded to our specialized consultant. We had one who missed the deadline, so they just never put in for it, but reached out. That's something we can, that I would like to take a look at and still be risk averse as much as possible. But I always laugh every time I look at this quarterly report where we have the pie chart, but it looks like a cookie.
It's a sugar cookie too, it's not even.
Yeah.
Okay, so I do wonder, like, if financial advisory firms are even looking at, and paying attention to where we put out the RFPs, and they're probably not even aware that
Probably
that
not,
system
so
even
we'll be more
exists, so it would have to be
targeted.
advertised a little bit more in a different way.
And target it out to them, yeah.
And then the other question, I know this, we talked about this when re-upping our relationship with Bank United was also looking at factors, not just, what interest rates and services banks provide, but what they're doing as far as reinvestment in the community and their work as a metric. Have we started to have conversations about how we might add that into the decision?
Good morning, Commissioner Shulman, Al Burns. As far as, I categorize that as DEI. And we are incorporating, I was actually responding to an email, we are incorporating DEI in all of our requests for proposal, that we send out. Where's your DEI statement for an organization? How are you benefiting the community at large, et cetera? Specifically, we have a banking solicitation that's out on the street right now, and one of the evaluation criterion in there is diversity and inclusion. How you support the communities, what are you doing for the small businesses, minority businesses as far as business loans? So bottom line up front, we are using that as a category when we evaluate proposals from all categories, not just financial institutions.
Okay, thank you, fantastic.
All righty.
Evidence we actually heard you and.
There is an abundance of evidence that I've been heard.
All righty, we're there. We're now, reports are over. So
No, we have one more report,
I'm sorry?
the PSA Access Report.
Bonnie,
Oh, we have a PSA Access Report.
Here one.
Item 5C.
Item 5C, where's my, it's not on my agenda.
Okay, sorry.
Well, it's not on my
Script.
script.
Bonnie's in
That
charge.
was
So
added
it
last
doesn't
week.
exist.
Yeah.
Huh?
So you gotta run this on the
Mr.
fly.
Miller?
Let me see.
Okay, well,
So, who, are you gonna do this, or is Bonnie gonna do this, or you
in your
both?
packet by Bonnie as a right, so I'm gonna call on
Right,
her.
not on here.
Okay.
Right.
No, it's
I
on
think all the
script.
numbers are looking pretty good, in going in a positive direction, except, when I saw this one report, I looked at the complaints went up a little bit in the month of July, and I asked Bonnie, and I think she's got a good answer for why that happened.
Yeah.
Oh, Bonnie, you're here?
Yeah, I'm here.
Hi.
So in July, we have been talking a lot about how we record complaints, and there's a lot of discussion of what is a complaint? Is if a client mentions anything about their experience, at what point does it become a complaint or not? We had a lot of discussion on it, and within the mobility team, we decided to have a complaint line as part of our phone tree. So if you dial 1888, option 1, you can book an MOD ride. Option 2, access ride. Option 3, check on the status of the ride. So now we have option 7, which is if you'd like to leave a complaint, comment, or commendation, there's a more formal way to do that. And we're starting to refer riders that call in, and a lot of times riders will want to book a trip, but they're also sort of making a complaint. And I think even when I take reservation calls, it's hard for me to determine, are we booking the trip, or are we trying to make a complaint? So there's a more formal distinction, well, let me book your trip now. If you'd like to make that complaint, you can either call back, or I can just forward you that line. So we have seen an uptick in the number of complaints, but I really think that that's just due to riders having a more formal way to record those.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, the tracking of complaints that, gets into the, what is a complaint exactly? If they say, well, my Uber driver was mean to me
Right.
2 months ago, or I don't like that man.
Understand.
Yeah. But, so we might take a look at this in the future also, about, we have different ways of tracking customer satisfaction overall.
So that complaint is actually going to a whole different line though, right? You said 1888, was that correct?
Yeah, so
Yeah.
that's our mobility, all the number of the riders call to book trips, check on trips. We didn't have a complaint line before. I
Right.
think it was more of an informal process, and I think we were missing some complaints that we would get, it's a little bit of a gray area. If a rider's calling in and they're upset about a trip in real time, we try to just fix it. It goes to a lead and we try to take care of it. We were just trying to make it a more formal process so we could determine, okay, what's a complaint and what's not a complaint, putting that a little bit more back on the rider instead of us making that
Yeah,
determination.
okay. That makes sense.
And so these July numbers then represent that switch.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So it's more of an accurate.
I think it's more accurate.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
But otherwise, things are looking pretty good. In the next meeting in 10 minutes.
Okay, so
Bonnie will be giving them more.
let me not, I'm not quite done here. But you go first, Mr. Schulman,
About.
about the same topic.
So I just wanted to mention that if we could on the actual chart, just like we have new contractors start, just to notice, like, just put a graphical, another yellow line that says, call
Oh.
logging, or
Yeah.
just,
Yeah, we can do that.
we know it now, but 3 months from now, we won't remember what that was. So if we could just add that on there, that'd be helpful.
Okay, good, thank you.
I have other business, but not.
Okay, yeah, well, we're gonna leave you plenty of time to bang your gavel.
I don't mind delaying my next meeting.
So I'm looking over numbers here again, and, on access. And our budgeted, for access, we're roughly running monthly about 200,000 under what we budgeted to First Transit. We're running about, well, essentially 200,000. We're way below our budget for First Transit. And I know a lot of that has to do with the software and the booking and the routing of that. So we use, MOD is the backup for that, essentially. If somebody can't get a ride, am I not correct, if they can't get it on?
We hardly ever deny rides on
But-
access.
Okay, but they do get moved around a lot too, because they're like, I know we have peak times, because I experienced this before. 9 to 10 on Wednesday is like, forget about it, I think every doctor and his brother, open up on Wednesday for, so I need to know, I need a specific number too, because I've asked for numbers. What are we paying for MOD? What are we paying for the ambulatory part of it? Are we paying meter rate? Are we paying a fixed rate if, we have to use MOD and use Uber, Lyft, or whomever, or Yellow Cab? If it's not a scheduled ride for them, how are we paying for that? Are we paying a meter rate, or how are we doing that?
It's a meter rate for all of the contractors. So Uber and Lyft, it's just the regular metered rate. Same with Berry, Metro, United Taxi. Wheelchair transport, there's a base charge that includes the first 3 miles of the trip, and then there's like a metered,
Well, it's in this like 41, is that a flat rate that we pay them? That's for the MOD?
we don't pay them a flat rate. It is based on mileage.
Okay, so it's on mileage, so that can get pretty expensive then too.
Yeah, but Commissioner Cox, to your point, the Americans with Disabilities Act requires
I understand.
us to provide all of the paratransit, all the requested paratransit rides.
Right.
So it's not a matter of, if it's overloaded, then you go to the other program.
Right.
It doesn't work like that. The customer it's totally up to the customer.
Right.
If they want an access ride, they get an access ride.
Right.
Even in busy times.
Right,
But sometimes in busy times, or if their doctor's appointment runs late or whatever, there are access customers who requested a access ride that say, oh, well, just put me over on them, just give me my ride right now.
right.
And, or things change. So that's what happens, but it's not an overflow kind of situation as you were kind of describing it.
Well, I'm looking at a money flow situation.
Right, and the fact there is, the contract we have with First Transit, if you take that price, that cost per ride, now again, we're paying per hour.
Right.
So, but if you boil down to the per ride, it is substantially more than the Uber and Lyft and taxi rides. It's about the same as the wheelchair
So
transport.
we pay them $29 an hour, am I correct, for each person that they have out there on duty? Is that how they get work? I'm talking about
We pay
First Transit.
First Transit, we pay them a fixed price, for their facility and their upper management every month of $200,000 a month.
Uh-huh.
And then we, on top of that, I think $29 a ride.
29 an hour for each active driver that's out there too.
29 an hour, yeah. Yeah, but yeah, if you boil all that down, it's a competitive rate for the wheelchair type services. And again, that fee also, that they do not provide the ambulatory rides, that goes to USERV.
Right.
We pay that.
But which is, I see they're, actually, it looks like they're going up.
Yes.
Yeah.
We've gotten user to really ramp up the number of drivers that they have. We look at the number of trips. It's a kind of complicated model on how we give user trips, but the number of trips they return to First Transit has gone down a lot, so
Well,
they're doing a good job.
and again, with Uzo, it comes to a driveway acceptability too. If he sees, or he or she see a ride, do they get to see where that ride's going, do you know? Like if it's going from St.
Yeah.
Pete to Tarpon?
Yeah.
I can do that ride, you know, and it's at 75%, I see right now, and our goal is 90% for usage.
Yeah, we do want to keep, increasing the number of rides that user takes. The
Right.
driver does get to see the trips. They handpick their trips ahead of time so that they aren't surprised. Like, I think like with Uber or Lyft, sometimes you don't see where the destination
right.
is of the customer. So the drivers know ahead of time. And any trips that they don't take come back to First Transit, but we are seeing a lot fewer return trips.
Going back, well, because First Transit can't really route these rides right now anyway, because they don't have access to dispatch. And do you know, are we making any leeway? And I'm gonna make this real brief, because I tend to get too bored. But are we making any progress on that?
Yes.
Okay, that's all I want to know. I don't want to.
More to come next meeting.
All right, good, thank you.
Mr. Chair, I think, are we on to other business?
Yeah,
I gotta hit the road.
oh, and
Sorry, Mr.
city
Chair.
commission, Mayor,
I have another meeting, I'm sorry.
all right, mayors are important people. Thank you. Thank you
All right,
for being
guys,
here
thank
today.
you.
Thank you for your
Just
participation.
as you go out, you'll notice our beautiful newly branded, our first branded new look PSTA bus.
Oh, for real?
Thanks to Henry's Paint and Body Shop for painting a beautiful white and turf.
We'll
what's
look
the-
at it after Josh.
sea green bus.
Well, and honestly, my only other business was just a plea from the personnel committee to board members to make sure they complete Brad's
Oh, I'll be
evaluation.
reminding you all.
What'd you say?
I said, I'll be reminding you all, don't forget about it.
Well, I just want to say it on the record here, so that way, no one's like, I didn't know, I didn't get the email.
Oh, yeah.
So,
And it's due when?
August 26th.
Every few days, I'll send out an
What
email.
we need to know. Any other business here today, y'all? If not, this meeting's adjourned. Thank you.
Great job.
Thank you, Bonnie.
Great job.
Yeah. We tried.
Start the planning soon.
Yeah, we need to just switch
I
things
can't-
over. We need a couple-
Hi,
That
Deb.
other stuff, I can't attend that meeting, and I know you're disappointed.
Yes.
Welcome. Jim, you're welcome to join us.
Oh, yeah.
Transition.